One dog to another, couple of sweeties. Look at Kibba and Kima. Gorgeous little things being held by Hannah Greeno, who's with us here in the studio, and Grant Feller looking disparagingly on.
Slightly
Not
reticent.
a fan of dogs, are we, Grant?
Not really, no.
We're talking then about whether or not people spend too much money on their dogs, whether they anthropomorphise their dogs far too much, whether there's just too much of a connection really now, but and not enough of a distinction, if you like, between animal and human. Grant, you don't really like dogs. In fact, they positively get on your nerves. Just list for us all the things you hate about dogs.
Well, I suppose it's because I grew up without animals. I understand that, and that's something that, probably people think is defective in me, but I used to prefer the company of other human beings and myself as well. And I suppose when I got into adulthood, I realised that I felt like I was the odd one out. I felt that I was strange, and the fact that I didn't enjoy dogs, and that I didn't, I'm sorry, but I understand it's irresponsible dog owners, but when they're free to defecate in the parks and in the streets, and they're barking at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I think to myself, this isn't right. And especially when you live in London. I know that it's very different if you live in a wonderful green space outside, but when you're living in London, it's often very irresponsible, I think, to be a dog owner, especially if you're going to be out at work most of the day, and you leave at 8 in the morning, you come home at 8 at night, and I think that that's just my stance, but it feels I'm the one who's made to feel odd, and I don't like that.
Hannah, that's the point we're trying to talk about here, that Grant is being made to feel as if he's odd. Strange, I think, was the word you used for not liking dogs. You clearly love dogs. What was your first trigger, if you like, that set you off on the path to being such an animal lover?
Well, I was raised with dogs, and I was raised with animals in general. So for me, when I look at a dog or another animal, I see a family member. So for me, these are like babies, so, I mean, I don't have children, but I see them as the same way as maybe Grant, who has children, would see his kids. So, when you treat them as a family member, then you can kind of understand where people come from when they're so passionate about their dogs.
But you can also understand Grant's position that when dogs are left to defecate on the streets, make a mess for everybody else when they're howling at God knows what time in the morning, this is a nuisance, and we shouldn't really be allowing them this liberty.
Yeah. I mean, even me, as a dog lover, I cannot stand irresponsible dog owners. But, when they're allowed to run up to people and steal their picnics, and, when there's defecation...
It's not just that, sorry, it's not just that. The other week I had some friends around, we had a barbecue in the garden, and there was about a dozen of us, and a couple of really good friends came round. And they were at the door, I knocked on the door, and they came in, and they had their dog in their arms, and they said, "You don't mind, do you?" As if, of course, I wouldn't mind. And I was thinking to myself, well, yes, I do mind. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything because I felt, even in my own house, I felt that I wasn't quite right if I had rejected them. So, dog came in, stayed in the corner, but all the evening I felt quite uncomfortable, and I thought, well, that's not the way to be. And I understand if you think you feel a dog is part of the family, but for a lot of people, it isn't like that.
Why would people's bad manners like that, and indeed, mess on the streets and other bad behaviour by dogs, make you dislike dogs?
Well, I don't know. What you're saying is I dislike dogs because of other people.
Is that right?
I dislike dogs probably because of that, yes, but also perhaps it's because I haven't had ownership of a pet. I mean, I had a couple of goldfish that I won at a fair when I was a little kid, and they last a few weeks. But really, I haven't had ownership of a pet. We had a rabbit in the house for a short period of time, for a year or so, and the children loved it. But of course, in the end, it was me and my wife Sian, and we were the ones who were looking after the rabbit most of the time, and they were cuddling and then going to school, and that was it. So perhaps it's not so much that I dislike them, that I'm resent them.
Grant's right. Grant's being really honest about this, isn't he? He's just saying, he feels resented and he resents the human behaviour surrounding animals.
But then going back to the barbecue situation, that is unfair to put somebody in that position, because it's not, even though I'm saying we recognise them or I recognise them as a family member, I wouldn't go to somebody's house with a dog necessarily, unless I'd
You know what? You wouldn't even rock up with your kids if you hadn't.
Well, it's the same thing.
If I was to invite you around to the house and I said to you, "But please don't bring the dogs," you would probably think,
No, I would respect
think
that.
he is?
I
Don't
would
you think?
respect that. Yeah. No,
Really?
I've actually had a similar situation with my brother's toddler had a birthday party, and I wasn't allowed to take my dog in, and that's fine because there's a house full of kids, and you don't want to have to worry about where the dog is or what the dog's up to.
Yeah.
And it's not relaxing really when you've got to pay attention to, because if you're the person taking your dog into somebody else's house, you need to be aware at all times of where it is and what it's doing.
Yeah.
So it's not that relaxing really.
And it's also, we were talking briefly before about allowing your dog to run off. And there was an occasion a couple of years ago when we were down in Cornwall, and I was walking along with my son on the beach, and there was a huge dog on the other side of the beach running after and sort of jumped on my son, flung him to the ground. He was crying, and the owner came out and said, "Oh, don't worry, he just wants to have a play."
But isn't there a range of behaviour with any animal or even person, in terms of human behaviour, there's a range of behaviour that you can approve of or
Sure.
disapprove of, and I suppose that's how dog owners and dog lovers interpret that behaviour. You can recognise that,
I
can't
can
you?
see that, I can
Yeah,
see
but-
that. And perhaps what you're saying is I need some sort of
No, but
therapy
that's
by
not okay.
by owning a dog for a short period of time
how
and falling in
handleable
love
are the
with
two
them.
little... Could we perhaps get Grant to cuddle one of these little doggies? I mean, come on, Grant, have a little cuddle of... Which cute one do you want? Here we go. Look, your kids are watching, you said. Look, Daddy's got a special surprise for you,
That's
kids. He wants to bring home... Forget the rabbit. Look at this. Daddy's really loving...
I've been stitched up here, haven't I?
Hold it. Look, you see? Have a little cuddle.
Lovely.
Oh, look,
A little, this is a cuddle. This is
that doesn't look particularly tender, I have to say,
No,
Grant.
I know.
Aw, just make him feel safe.
There we will. Which one, me or him?
Look, see how he's tucked in here and he feels safe?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that what you want me to do?
Yeah, do that.
Yeah, you have to
See, the
tuck him
therapy's
in.
working. We knew this would work for you, Grant.
But honestly, it's not okay for dogs to run off. Going back to the incident on the
He's falling
beach.
asleep,
It's
look.
not.
Happy. Sorry.
Look at that, it's amazing.
When you're saying, there's a range of behaviours that should be accepted, that isn't one of them. When dogs run off and they cause a nuisance to society, that's not okay. And that
Nobody
sort of
likes
behaviour-
irresponsible dog owners.
Yeah.
Nobody likes irresponsible
No.
smokers. Nobody likes irresponsible
Yeah.
humans. And so
You know what's
perhaps-
quite interesting, by the way, sorry, was that I'm not nervous at all about coming on to talk to you live on television,
Yeah.
but I am quite nervous at
Are
this
you?
moment.
Really?
And I wonder whether the dog can sort of,
They
sense
do,
that.
they do pick that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, dogs are slightly more unpredictable. I mean, here we're having a chat. I mean, but you don't really know what she's going to do.
No, I don't. I have no
So
idea
that
what she's
it's
going to do.
unpredictable,
Is it a she,
so-
by the way?
yeah.
Yes, okay.
And maybe that's at the heart of it.
What's
Maybe
she
it's
doing?
just confidence for you. She's sniffing to see who you are.
Really?
Maybe that's just part of it, Grant. I mean, you said right at the beginning of the interview, didn't you, that you weren't brought up with dogs as a child.
No.
Maybe this is something that you can bring to your family so that your children aren't like you when they're adults.
Really, they're at home now saying, yes,
Yes, yes, Daddy, bring home
It's
this
not
cute
going to
doggy.
happen. I'm sorry.
Work on him, kids. Work on him. Look how cute that is. Just a final word, Hannah?
Yeah, I think it is all down to irresponsible dog owners, but the problem is that they don't see themselves as irresponsible. So they'll allow their dogs to run off to people and say, "Oh, it's okay, he's friendly."
He doesn't bite.
Yeah, but that is irresponsible in itself, even though they have the best intentions.
And,
And it really
a
is
good
about
idea for
educating
children to
people.
grow up with dogs, do you think?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah. I think it's brilliant for their immunity and for their emotional depth, everything.
You're probably right. I mean, look at me. Right, yeah.
Oh, I thought you were very honest. Grant, thank you very much for your thoughts. And
You're
Hannah,
welcome.
thank you too.
Thank you.
And thank you two little cuties too. Great to meet all of you. Thank you.
Thanks.